Sound must be up on the mixer. Okay,
it's council presentation drugs file.
Let's move that over there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
I can leave it minimized if you want. I'm not sure who's presenting what,
Perfect.
when, but we'll just move it over here. And you're good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I have the agenda, but it... So you alright?
Oh yeah.
You're not sore yet, or yeah, a little bit.
Just happy that things didn't end up worse.
Yeah. Everybody's okay.
I know, it's supposed to be just a quick up there, and then we were taking all our drugs up there, throwing in the mines, and destroying on our way back. Then our day got terribly inconvenient.
I don't know, where do we hang out?
Agenda tonight. Can we do the presentation on, can we do item 3
first. One of the officers that's going to be presenting that information was involved in a crash today. A lady crossed. They were out doing an operation near Globe, and a lady crossed over the center median.
So do it first.
hit him
Is
head
he
on.
okay?
He's okay, but he needs to go to the hospital after this. He's having some neck pain. So if we can do them first, and then he can head to the hospital.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Is he the only one that can do it?
Him and Kenny doing it together.
Do we need him?
He's here and he's more than happy to do it. So if we can just put him on first, and then we can send him on.
We'll do this as our 10-second warning. Welcome to our October 2nd, 2012 study session. Councilmember Cook will be calling in, and have we successfully connected with Councilmember Cook? Not called in yet? Okay, thank you. For purposes of efficiency, we're going to shift and do agenda item number 3 to begin. And this is a presentation on state and local trends and drug use. And the individuals that will be doing that presentation, we will turn to you. Thank you.
There he is.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lewis, Council. Appreciate you allowing us to come and present to you. My name is Mike Angstead, and with me is Lacey Cox. We both work in the police department. I'm going to cover a little bit about drug trends from an enforcement standpoint, and then Lacey's going to speak to treatment and some of those issues. Jumping into kind of what's leading up to this presentation, I am the Tactical Operations Lieutenant over at Gilbert PD. I supervise our Special Investigations team, which is comprised of 1 sergeant and 4 detectives. And their primary mission is to do narcotics enforcement. Speaking about kind of what they've run into, when we talk about trends here in Gilbert and really in Arizona in general, especially in the Valley, one way to look at it is to look at what we're running into. What kind of seizures are we doing out on the street? And then another way to look at it is what are the kids and the folks that live in our community, what are they actually using? This first slide talks about the overall seizures that our Special Investigations team has done this year, so far, year to date. And as you can see, with regard to regular marijuana, 669 pounds, high-grade marijuana, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later, it's a little bit different, 66 pounds, meth 34.5, cocaine 25.9, and heroin 23 pounds. The street value on those drugs combined is about $1.5 million. And that's if you got the Costco bulk price on those drugs, so to speak. By the time they get retailed out and they actually end up with the end user, it's usually 3 or 4 times that amount. When we look at drug seizures here in the Valley, we also have to keep in mind that the Phoenix metro area is a major hub to the rest of the United States. Yes, sir.
You may be covering this because I don't know what your slides are, but are you going to tell us trend-wise, how does this compare with last year or previous years?
I can tell you that really, if we were to compare it to last year, the drug trends don't change that much from year to year. But if we were to go back 5 or 10 years, and I'm going to get to some of these changes, a lot of things have changed, particularly with meth and prescription drug use and things like that. But what stays kind of consistent is the demand for all kinds of drugs. As you can see, all of these categories, if you multiply them out by their street value, all of them end up being around $300,000 takes. So 669 pounds of marijuana you can buy for about $330,000. The heroin's about $230,000 worth of heroin. There's just significant quantities of all these different categories. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have drugs that are coming up from the border. They stop temporarily in the Phoenix metro area. They're sold or brokered to middlemen, and then they're shipped out to the rest of the country. And most of the states that reside in the Southwest are dealing with that same problem. it's not necessarily indicative of what people necessarily use here in Gilbert, per se. And just furthering that conversation, when we look at this guy up here in this picture, this is from the Arizona Meth Project, if you go onto their website right now. This guy's picking at sores, he's got bad teeth, and these are a lot of the symptoms that we see for people that use methamphetamine. The Arizona Meth Project has done such a good job at demonizing methamphetamine that we've seen this trend now is meth use is down. In fact, meth production here in the United States and in Arizona is virtually non-existent. We just don't run into meth labs very much anymore. Most of the meth that we do encounter, because we still encounter it, as you saw on the previous slide, all of it is coming up through Mexico. But there's two things that have led to the decline of meth use here in Arizona. One is the Arizona Meth Project did a great job at showing young people these are the effects, these are what you see, and they kind of capitalized on the fact that teenage people are kind of vain. They don't want to look like the gentleman up here. So they want to avoid that. And then the ephedrine regulation, where you have to go, if you buy Sudafed at Walmart, you now have to fill out paperwork to get those drugs. By locking up the ephedrine, it kept the local cooks from being able to convert the chemicals and make their own labs locally. So what has replaced meth here locally in terms of use? That's heroin. We do run into lots of older teens and young adults that are heroin users. A lot of them, when we speak to them after we arrest them on the enforcement side, we'll ask them, do you use methamphetamine? And they'll get sort of offended by that question. Well, I don't have sores in my teeth. I don't want my teeth all messed up. I stick with heroin. But one of the problems with heroin is that you don't see a lot of the physical effects right away. People can use it for a while and they sort of look normal, and you don't deal with that same deterrent with the vanity issues. But we also have to deal, obviously, with overdoses and deaths due to heroin and the extreme addiction that comes with it. The two common roads that we find with regard to people that end up using heroin are either they started with prescription pills recreationally, or they had an injury, or however they came in contact to prescription pills. And the prescription pills worked well, drug-wise, they're very effective. People get hooked on them. The problem is they're also very expensive. They can be as costly as $30 a pill out on the street. So young people will resort to buying heroin instead. It's a lot cheaper. Once we get to a point with the user where they're hooked on heroin, when we speak with them on the enforcement side, they'll tell us that we literally have to have it, otherwise we get sick. And by being sick, we mean if you ever think about having the flu, times that by 10, and that's what it feels like if we don't use. So we end up with people who feel like they have to use heroin every day just to literally get out of bed. Moving on to marijuana, there's kind of two kinds of marijuana out there. There's regular marijuana, which is a picture there on the bottom left, and then there's high-grade or chronic, as it's known on the street, marijuana that's on the right. As you can see, they look different, and they are very different. The high-grade marijuana has a much stronger THC content, much stronger effects, and it's becoming increasingly more popular. We deal with a lot of home invasion robberies, a lot of parking lot robberies with people still buying and selling marijuana. It's still illegal to trade marijuana for anything, to exchange it for anything of value. You still cannot go out and sell marijuana or buy marijuana, even with a medical card. We have had deals where people have been robbed during police operations for very small amounts of marijuana. And to say that there is no crime or any violence that goes along with marijuana, it would be a misstatement. There certainly is. In terms of medical marijuana grows, as most of you know right now, we are in a situation where the dispensaries for medical marijuana are not fully up and running. That issue is still being dealt with by different government agencies and different courts. So we have people that have been given a card and that have right now the statutory right to grow their own marijuana at home. There are certain limits on how many plants they can have, but it is an issue that law enforcement is dealing with, particularly from neighbors that say
this person's growing marijuana at their home, and I don't like that. And right now, that's that is the way the law is set up. But like I said, it's still illegal to exchange anything of value for marijuana. The last category of drugs that I wanted to talk about, you know, along with the proliferation of prescription pills, the Oxycontins, the opiates that people get hooked on, we're seeing increasingly more and more the spice and bath salt cases. And a lot of people have questions about what exactly are bath salts and spice. It's not the aromatherapy or the traditional bath salts that people used to put in water and kind of enjoy. It's completely different stuff. It's a central nervous stimulant. It's made of synthetic chemicals, comes in a powder and crystal form. People buy it for $25 to $75 per 50 milligram packet. It's relatively cheap compared to other drugs. It's available through the internet, and when people get it, they typically snort it, although you can, as long as it gets into your body, it's going to have some type of effect. The behaviors that we typically see with people that use bath salts or spice is they have euphoria for about 3 or 4 hours, psychosis. There are times where they become suicidal. They become high, similar to cocaine, meth, or LSD. Extreme paranoia, psychotic features. They report seeing things that aren't there. Violent behavior, confusion. We deal with people on a routine basis that are taking bath salts and driving. So you can imagine all of those types of behaviors, plus trying to drive an automobile. So it's become a real problem. In terms of whether or not it's legal or illegal, as you can see, that MDPV, this chemical, super long chemical name, that's one of the substances that's banned under state law. And that's one of the substances that was in one of the original versions of bath salts. And the Arizona State Legislature recognized this is bad stuff, we need to ban it. They added this chemical to the law, and you cannot sell bath salts with this particular chemical. The problem is, because it's a synthetic chemical and it's made in a lab, the chemist will change the formula a little bit, change it into another compound, put that in the bath salts, and it's always this cat and mouse game with the legislature. The chemists make it into a different compound before the law can catch up to it. So what's recently happened is the DEA has taken the lead on bath salts and spice, and they have basically seized a lot of the assets for the folks that produce this at the highest levels in the United States. And there was a lot of movement in the last couple of months by the DEA. So they understand the plight or the situation by the state governments trying to ban these chemicals and keep up with it. And they're taking the lead on the federal side and trying to discourage manufacturers from producing it to begin with. But somebody can walk in to a smoke shop or order over the internet and buy these right now. So as long as they don't have a chemical that's currently banned. And from a treatment side, this is Lacey.
Okay, is it this one? Okay. Yes, from the intervention and the prevention side, at the police department, we deal with both youth and adults who are involved in substance abuse, and we're seeing exactly what Mike was just talking about as far as what people are coming in for. In our youth diversion program, they may come in for even just alcohol, and what we do is we do an assessment to assess all of their use, because what we're seeing is we may get them on alcohol, but they're also involved using bath salts. We see a huge problem with prescription medication that they're getting from parents and friends' parents, medicine cabinets. So we'll assess them, and then depending on how much they're using and what they're using, we have education and we can refer them out for intervention for that. And then usually we'll do follow-up with them and their parents. Then we also see a lot of adults from the municipal court, and that is for DUI drugs, drug paraphernalia, and then minor consumption of alcohol. So they, again, are court-ordered to be assessed by us, determine their level of usage. They're court-ordered out into treatment. and then they're monitored until they complete treatment, and seeing very similar things as far as youth and adults. Then on the prevention side, I passed around a brochure that we have at the police department that is always in the Youth and Adult Resources lobby. We have one that's on drugs and we have one that's on gangs. And we just really, really push education. Parents have to stay current. And it's really hard even for us to stay current because things change so quickly and new things come out. And so parents really have to make an effort to stay educated and kind of keep up with what's going on. The other thing is they have to stay involved. They've got to know where their kids are, know who they're with, know what they're doing, where they're doing it, and just a constant reminder to them that it's okay for them to be doing that as parents. And then finally being a good role model as far as how are they role modeling their behavior as far as substances. Because when we look at all of this, still the #1 problem is alcohol. And it's always been that way, and I think it will always stay that way. And that's kind of the starting point for all of this. As far as DUIs, we are seeing more DUI drugs than we used to in the past, but there's still, a large portion of them are alcohol related. And then I brought together, these are a bunch of resources that parents can use. They're great resources, and they're usually really good about keeping up as far as what's going on and what the current trends are especially among adolescents. Any questions?
Thank you. Is this brochure available electronically?
Yes, it is.
And under the direction of our town manager, Patrick, I see Jennifer back there. This would be a great presentation to have available on our website, as you said, for parents. And we will take, Mike, your presentation too, and thank you. I know you've had an interesting wild day, and thanks for being here. And we'll make this available, the presentation, to our faith group leaders, to our school district leaders, and let them also share it, because this is information that we want to be paying attention to. Other comments from the council? Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation.
We move to agenda item number 1, and then in preparation for Thursday night, Vice Mayor Sens, do we have requests from the council to have various items pulled? And related to the presentations, proclamations, I'm going to do that at the end of our discussion.
No, I think pulling the individuals like you normally do would be
Okay.
best.
Councilmember Cooper?
No, sir.
Councilmember Peterson?
12, 14, and 17.
Vice Mayor Sens? Councilmember Ray?
Just a couple questions on item 9.
Councilmember Daniels? Okay, thank you. The items that I wanted to discuss are listed, and then we'll also cover 23 and 26 in our discussion today, and then we'll go back to our presentation proclamations at the end. So agenda item number 9, let's go in the numerical order. And Councilmember Ray.
A couple questions for you, Chief. I noticed that looking at the financial impact of this, you guys estimate that it'll be about $2,700 out of the budget. Well, that would be the cost. The budget will cover part of it. Part of it will be covered by the Gilbert Police Citizens Alumni Association to help offset that cost. In looking at the contract, a couple questions is, you guys say that you anticipate $2,700 a year, more or less ongoing, as the expense that would keep this. I don't see anywhere costs for a vehicle and some of the other requirements. I noticed by the contract, the town is required to provide a vehicle for the dog and the handler and things, which would be expected. Will that come back later as a budget item? Is there already a vehicle in fire that's set and ready for that? How would we expect to see that item?
And Chief DeWitt, if you could give an overview of This involves a very special asset for police and fire. Please.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Ray, and certainly all the council members. I'll try to give a little summary. And for the specific question, I think I understand the question well, and I can respond to it. But the Fire Marshal Dan Dubois is here also, and he's been the point of contact for the ATF in this whole negotiation. So I would defer to him any detail that might be fault. Some time ago, not just recently, the Arms, Tobacco, and the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division of Department of Justice has contacted our fire marshal with the opportunity of having an accelerant canine. Now, an accelerant canine is different than the money dog or the drug dog or the cadaver dog. It works with accelerants in arson type. The state of Arizona has no accelerant dog at the present time. They have been retired and not replaced. The ATF had a dog that was available, and they saved it for some agency in Arizona and called, notified Fire Marshal Dubois that it was here and would we accept that dog. They're holding a place in the training for that dog and the handler. We have 2 sworn and as post certified arson investigators assigned to the town and have been for some years. One of those has accepted the assignment and desires to be the handler. That person has a vehicle assigned to him in the normal operation of his dogs, and we may have to adjust to another vehicle, but the vehicle exists in our fleet to accommodate that at the present time, and we'll follow that train as the dog continues throughout its service here in the town of Gilbert. The dog will be used for investigation of arson-type fires for accelerant. It will be deployed also for other cities in the valley, as well as very possibly in the state. We've tried to track the number of times that's occurred, and I'd let Fire Marshal Dubois speak to that if you have a question regarding that. But to your question about a vehicle, the vehicle currently exists in the fleet. And that's the overview of the use of the dog. It's a very valuable dog to us. Currently, in the past, we've been able to call upon other dogs who have now been retired. They don't exist in our state. The closest dog is in Oregon, in fact, as I understand. So we're very fortunate to have a dog, and the costs are minimal for the use that it would receive. We'll track that use and certainly be able to report back and let you all know how that's working. But if there are any other questions, I'd be glad to respond or ask Fire Marshal Dubois.
So one of our current fire employees would house this dog, and what would happen when they're off in other cities or towns helping investigate? But it sounds like they'd be called on occasionally to go elsewhere and help assist. Is the town reimbursed for that? How does that work?
Mayor and Councilmember Ray, I would defer to the research that Fire Marshal Dubois has done to answer that question. I've got a good idea, but I'd rather have him give you the straight answer. So let me defer to him.
Good afternoon. As far as ATF, if it's an ATF call out, which is part of the agreement, we would be reimbursed all costs except the employee cost and overtime. And normally that ATF, national response teams, when they are actually activated and they respond, they're usually gone 72 hours within that time frame. They work very fast and then they're back. So we don't anticipate anything great. Last year, ATF had 14 national responses total. In this region, there was only 1. So we don't anticipate a great deal of call out. That's one of the reasons why they want one in Arizona. Arizona is one of the only states that they don't have a dog in. You know, that's what I mean. We had one in Tolleson where they called the national response team. They had to get a dog out of Oregon to get them down here, which would have been nice if we'd have been available here.
So you don't anticipate this person being busy enough to need to hire additional personnel to help cover if and when they're called off to other situations?
No, I do not. I mean, they encourage us to do local participation, which we already do anyway through our arson task force, and it's my job. We don't have to do that as part of the agreement, but when we can, we want to help out our neighbors too, but I don't anticipate that being a problem.
Dan, there are a lot of reasons why people select Gilbert. And hearing this, was there a specific reason why they said Gilbert would be a great place for the dog?
Actually, yes. When I talked to them on the phone, we were their first choice. That's why they gave us a call and said they had one dog and they were holding it. And if we would like the opportunity to do that, submit the application and go through it. Through the Arson Task Force, they know the type of organization we are and the individuals we have.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Wright is, okay, thank you. Agenda item number 12, Councilmember Peterson.
Mayor, there's just a detail here. I'm not sure it needs to be resolved or not, but I noticed the agreement for shared parking retains use by the town, but also gives use to Postinos. And it's first come, first serve. I understand that. But in the case of maybe a special event that the town may want to hold where we're kind of monopolized, we would like to use that space. There's a conflict of use between the restaurant and the town. How is that resolved? That was my only real concern or question.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Sens?
I had a question on this as well. Kind of tags on to what Councilmember Peterson was saying. This 50-foot strip, we've been talking about this for eons. And I'd like to know what the plan is to sell it, get some use out of it. Number one, it's right in the middle between two major commercial enterprises, and I'm not sure what the benefit to the town is of owning this 50-foot strip.
Thank you. So we have 2 or 3 questions there. I don't see Greg, so Town Manager Banger, you may point, and it looks like Kyle. Thank you, Kyle, for volunteering.
Did you get the short straw, Kyle?
Mayor Lewis, Council, with regards to Councilman Peterson's question, that is an excellent question. I don't know the answer. I haven't been involved with this document, so I'll have to do some checking unless Susan may have some insight.
Early on, that was one of the questions that was raised, and I explained to Greg what is what is required in order to sell town property, and that's to auction it. And so there was some concern about somebody coming in and buying it that might not
properly use it.
Well, it wouldn't belong to the town, and it would. You don't exactly have a choice as who's going to bid the highest. So it might end up being owned by somebody who may want to turn around and sell it for a higher price to, maybe a restaurant or something. So given the requirement to auction it, that idea was abandoned, and all this agreement does is assure the owner that he can use it and will maintain it.
Okay. Councilmember Daniels?
It's my understanding that this isn't much different than the parking lot agreement that we have with Hale Theater, so perhaps we can compare uses. We do have an agreement with them that they have a similar arrangement with the parking that's right behind Hale Theater, and so I see this as working similarly, which is that when we do have a town event, such as Gilbert Days and other downtown events, there are generally signs put up that say restaurant parking only or theater parking only, and they've done that in the past. And I personally don't see a problem with that, especially when you consider all of the improved parking that's close by, including the park and ride and the new lots that have been paved. And so this 50-foot strip, while we could probably debate the proper uses for it, it's not exactly on the agenda. So if we could shift back to the actual agenda item, which is this agreement that's before us, I don't see it different than some arrangement that we already have with another local business. And I see benefit. They need close parking. We haven't built a parking structure, which the businesses downtown do feel like was promised to them, and so this is, I think, a good exchange in the meantime.
Thank you.
Mayor Lewis, just a thought: if there is a desire to reserve the ability of the town to limit or restrict parking uses during some special events or something downtown, we should probably clarify that in the agreement.
Thank you. Is that requests we might have?
That's my question really for the council. And really with the advice of staff, if that's needed, do we need to sometimes use some of those parking for some of our special events? Do we need to clarify that so we have that ability? That's why I'm asking. I don't have any major concerns with this, but it was just one detail that I thought might need some resolving.
And Kyle, you may not be able to answer this, but it's a great question, but is it an issue? Because we've proceeded for a long time with this type of agreement, so is this something we should consider or just note it as a question, but to move on?
Mayor Lewis, excuse me. I think if it's something that the council is overly concerned about, we can take some time and pause and look at it and maybe amend it. I would think, though, since there have been agreements like this in place, it's probably safe to say we can move forward and deal with any issues as they might arise.
Okay. Vice Mayor Sens?
Kyle, with the, I've heard rumors, maybe more than rumors, that the owner of Postino's is talking about another building between there and Oregano's. Is that going to encroach on this 50 feet, or is it, I mean, the parking's going to get really tight there.
Mayor Lewis, Councilmember Sens, it will not encroach upon the town's property. Well, the site plans that we've seen, it comes right up to the edge because there's zero build lines there. So it does come right up to the edge of the property line, but it does not cross the property line.
So this agreement will still be appropriate if they build that other building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to agenda item 14, Councilmember Peterson.
I just met a gentleman, I've already forgotten his name. I just wanted to recap a couple things for the benefit of, well, I just learned it. I thought others might appreciate the details. But can you, first of all, tell us why there is no state contract workable for this type of purchase yet? And then second, how these prices we're getting from Santan Ford compare to some of the others? Thanks.
Mayor Lewis, Council, Bill Cohn, Fleet Management. Currently, there is no state contract, and there hasn't been for these type of vehicles for a while. There's been a few things that have happened. With my previous employment, ADOT, those state contracts are written by my fellow staff and some of my subordinates. There is people retiring, and the actual police vehicle packages were written by a gentleman who worked for DPS, and Mike also retired. So there's been a lot of things going on. The other thing, most importantly, is that Ford has pulled out of the Crown Vic market, and that was the premium vehicle of choice across the country. And they have come up with a new vehicle, actually two new vehicles that are replacing the Crown Victoria. So there's a bunch of agencies across the country scrambling to put a contract together, but currently there is nothing.
Thank you.
And then can you tell us, we did check some other prices with competitors, and how did that turn out?
Mayor Lewis, Council, I did. I contacted Sanderson Ford yesterday and just to confirm the pricing they gave us, and I was quite impressed with the price that Santan had provided. It was considerably lower than Sanderson Ford. And Sanderson Ford has been in the fleet and commercial government vehicle world. They are the premier dealer for providing vehicles. So I was surprised to see that Santan was very competitive.
The bottom line is we're getting a lower price, plus we get to keep the sales tax. So sounds pretty good.
Sounds win-win. And Bill, my understanding is that just like companies have a maintenance plan for computers and other type of assets, that we do also, that typical in Gilbert fashion, we have our vehicles go a little bit longer than maybe some other municipalities. And the current vehicles that we are replacing, we do a very good job of maintaining. They look good, but it's part of our maintenance plan to have these replaced, and so we proceed. Is that a correct understanding?
Mayor Lewis, Council, that is correct. We are pretty close to industry standard. Our mileage cutoff point is a little higher than most towns and cities across the country, but we have a rigorous PM program, and fact, some might say it's slightly overkill, but we're able to extend the life of these vehicles, and they are very reliable.
Yeah.
Rigorous and productive. So, Vice Mayor Sens.
I have a question. We did get a demonstrator of the new vehicle, the new Interceptor. And have we tested that? And is that why we're now ready to jump in and buy a bunch more?
Vice Mayor, Mayor, Council, we did. I didn't see it. I can refer to Commander Buckland, but across the country, many agencies, including the Highway, California Highway Patrol, they did an extensive study, and that's what they settled on. It's too early in its stages to determine what the actual cost per mile will be.
Yeah.
But what I do like about it, if I may add, there's a utility vehicle and the actual what they call I forgot the title of it. But anyway, the patrol car version. But they use identical parts inside. So we won't have to stock a wide variety of components for the two different vehicles. They're very interchangeable.
Thank you. Any other comments? And Commander Buckland, was there anything else that you wanted to add? I think it was that question about the vehicles, please.
Mayor Lewis, Vice Mayor Sens, Kenny Buckland with the Police Department. Yes, sir. We did actually, we haven't had a full test of it, but we have two of our driving instructors have driven it, went out to a large demonstration. They drove both the Interceptor sedan, they drove the utility vehicle, wrote up feedback, liked them both, pros and cons to both, but ultimately their recommendation was the utility overall, although both had use. Where we sit now is we would really like to test them out. Haven't been around, haven't been tested, so we're asking for a mix of them, but really to fit our purposes. We've got the sedans, the Interceptors, to replace the patrol fleet. We've got 3 of the utility vehicles on there, which are going to our crime suppression team. That way we can outfit those vehicles with the LPR technology better. They're better for surveillance because they have a different mission than patrol does. So it'll enable their work, their payload a little better, and also the K9 vehicle for more better room for the dog and for all the equipment that they have to carry.
Thank you. Bill, can we have you come forward one more moment? How long have you been with the town of Gilbert?
Mayor, Council, I've been here just over 3 months.
And we better, in the scope of this, ask you to take 30 seconds and tell us about your background so that we know.
Quickly, I started many years ago as a diesel mechanic, and I was fascinated with that business, and the first organization I worked for offered incentive points if you went to college. And so I went on to college. Next thing you know, I had a bachelor's degree and got promoted and went ahead and got my master's degree. And so I was a journeyman diesel mechanic with a master's degree. So I worked for large school districts, Deer Valley Unified School District, Scottsdale Public Schools as their directors. And then I spent the last 7 years with the Arizona Department of Transportation, and I managed their fleet, not only ADOT's fleet, but we took care of all state vehicles, so DPS, Arizona Department of Administration, all the agencies, 10,240 some odd vehicles at the peak.
Thank you. So the credentials are strong, and we're glad you're part of the team, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda 19, and also for the council, did I hear that Councilmember Cook has joined us? Great. Welcome. Well, we move to agenda item 19. Oh, excuse me, 17. And Councilmember Peterson.
Mayor, it's really just a brief comment on this. I will say that I could have concerns with this item. But it depends on what the IGA looks like that will be pursuant to this, but I understand that will be coming forward later, and all of my concerns can be resolved at that point. So if there are further questions, I'm happy to answer, but I don't want to drag it out. It's fairly future conversation. So
I was also going to pull this item for the community and not just the council. this is an exciting agenda item, and so Scott, if you can give us the overview, and if there are questions, great. If not, at least from a community perspective, this information has been shared.
All right. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much. I have a presentation if you'd like to be so indulged. I'm here to answer questions. I have Mr. Chris Keeler from Orbital Science here to ask questions. So how would you like to proceed?
Scott, how long is your presentation?
It can go as long as you would like it to go, but I can have it in about 5 minutes. I can be done in about 30 seconds if you really want me to.
3-minute version? Start the clock. Yes. We need to have you do this presentation.
All right.
And the short version is probably the answer.
Okay. I will move along. If you have questions, just fire them off. Briefly, foreign trade zone is what this item is referring to, specifically a subzone. Very quickly, foreign trade zones were established back in 1934 by Congress with the sole intention of promoting foreign trade and investment. Really didn't catch on until the 70s. Currently, there are about 200, there really are 253 zones and 500 subzones throughout the U.S. And Puerto Rico. So these things are used to support manufacturing and warehousing. They are run by the U.S. Customs and Border Control, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. And then through that, they authorize a general operator within the area. The one we're working with specifically here is Phoenix and Forward Trade Zone number 75. Moving forward, the items brought in are considered outside customs jurisdiction. Although they're within the U.S., they have not cleared customs yet. The point of doing this is you can bring in items, goods, raw materials, and perform some sort of value add or warehouse them. Usually by doing some assembly manufacturing, you can reduce tariff, duties, tariffs, et cetera, which provides a great benefit to the company. So in Orbital's case, they want to establish this. They're bringing in raw components, doing the manufacturing here, assembly, and then when they export it, they're literally exporting it to space. So one of two things happens. It either gets exported to a foreign country or clears customs and enters the U.S. Any associated duties are paid, just like bringing it in through any port of trade, and it is now officially in the U.S. It's only, again, for warehousing and manufacturing, no retail, i.e. a duty-free shop. Those aren't covered by this. Really here you got two types of zones. The general zone is the foreign trade zone most people think of. There are others, but for the purpose of this discussion and not getting ridiculously granular, we'll focus on these two. So you have one trade zone established, and anybody within a 60-minute commute or 90-minute, 90 miles can apply for a subzone designation. I'm going to actually skip to this slide. You can see here's a list of all the subzone applicants within FTZ 75. Names we all recognize from Intel, Abbott Labs, Sun Microsystems, and the American Italian Pasta Company in Tulsa. And then Arizona is one of few states that'll allow for some property tax reclassification. That items will be could be discussed later. 97, this has withstood court challenges for to allow that it is legal, meets the unified tax treatments, and really going forward with the IGA that Councilmember Peterson referred to needs to be approved for this to carry forward. The first step is a letter of support, which is what this agenda item is. Letter of support sought from all the taxing jurisdictions. Once that's achieved, an IGA will be entered in with the town of Gilbert and the city of Phoenix, which will kind of outline the roles and responsibilities. And if this is passed, we'll bring that forward to you. Right now, it's looking like meeting on 24 October. And then finally, with Orbital's doing, this is really coming off the Iridium Next project that was announced about a year and a half ago. They're looking at activating about 30% of their facility to accommodate the components being imported mostly from France. I know a few of them are coming in from other places. And the great news, this is giving Orbital the flexibility to expand and grow their operations here in Gilbert, and providing them with an opportunity to to maintain their world-class facility. And it's just another great business-friendly thing that we can do. So, with that, was that 2.5 minutes? I didn't keep the time.
That was the Federal Express version. Scott did a great job. Well, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here, and on behalf of the town of Gilbert, it's great to have Orbital Sciences. And I understand that in a satellite, there's about 10,000 parts assembled, and 80-plus satellites will be assembled right here in Gilbert, and so we appreciate you and all that you do for the jobs and just the overall reputation for Gilbert. So thank you. And is there anything else you wanted to add to what Scott said?
Oh, no, thank you very much, Mayor and council members. We definitely appreciate the enthusiasm that we received from town of Gilbert on this. You know, this is not only sustains the ongoing Iridium effort. 80 satellites is an undertaking very few companies have done in the United States. And the fact that we can do it here in Gilbert is just that much better. So we appreciate your help. Thank you very much. And we're always available for any questions, tours, and everything you needed. We're here also.
We are still looking at trademarking that phrase, satellite capital of the world, and I think we may have it, but thank you. Any questions or additional discussion? Councilmember Cooper.
I know this is a letter of support from the town of Gilbert, and there are other taxing jurisdictions involved. Have you had conversations with those jurisdictions, and how have those conversations gone, if you have?
Absolutely. Councilmember Cooper, Mayor, and Council. We've had discussions with Gilbert Public Schools about Mesquite High School and some of the projects we've discussed. We are on the agenda for the next council meeting. They seem very supportive, the same kind of discussions we've had with the town. We've talked with Dr. Lujan at the Chandler Gilbert Community College. Again, very supportive. We're supposed to meet with the chancellor today on that. I'm still trying to engage the assessor's office in Maricopa County. What we've looked at this is we've taken the Gilbert piece of the taxing, and then we've lumped everybody else, I think it was like flood, fire, libraries, into what we're calling Maricopa. And I'm trying to get some traction right now with the assessor's office there to understand what procedure do we need to go through for a similar letter of support.
Thank you. Scott and Chris, thank you. To the council, two other items. They're administrative items, 23 and 26. That gives us the flexibility to cover them today or Thursday. If we cover them today, then it will be just a matter of, possibly not having discussion on Thursday. What is the preference? 23, Carrie and Mark.
Mayor and Council, Mark Boynton with the HR Department. For your consideration and discussion input, if you will, we have a proposed recruiting and selection schedule for the town attorney position that was recently approved by council to bring legal services in-house. We're very confident in our ability to handle the selection process for the town attorney recruitment. One thing we can't duplicate is the services of an executive search firm to round out the applicant pool. They have a network that they've built over years, and I think it would be wise of us to tap into that pool. So you see there, we're ready to go ahead and move forward with developing a candidate profile and environmental assessment. We'll take that information and provide that to the executive search firm if you choose to contract with one, and count on them to develop the recruitment brochure and handle advertising to develop that applicant pool, and then provide us with the resumes of good candidates. From there, we would prepare a report to the council, and the council then would act on selecting candidates for assessment, for interviews, and so on and so forth. If I could, just getting back to the candidate profile, that's critically important, and we'll talk more about that in a couple of other documents I have for you. But that really becomes the basis and the foundation for the selection process. Once we can make a determination of the knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics in that candidate profile, then we can very clearly identify the most appropriate assessment tools to select the attorney. Going on, there will be a period of active interviews and assessment, time for reference checking and background checking, and then with the targeted completion date of March the 1st. Any questions about the proposed selection process?
Continue.
I was just, one quick question.
Councilmember Cooper.
Just because staff is on here in a couple of places, but this conduct initial screening interviews, that I assume would be the HR kind of experts in your department, right?
That's correct, Councilmember Cooper. I anticipate, though, that we would also want participation from some other corners. I think there should be a legal expert on that phone interview panel, if you will, and probably a member of the Legal Services Subcommittee also. But I think 3 people could comfortably handle those interviews and then report to the full council.
Thank you.
So the next document you see just gives a summary of information we were able to gather from executive search firms that are active in the Valley. CPS HR Consulting, Bob Murray and Associates, and Slavin Management Consultants. We also did contact Waters, but they didn't have a lot to offer in terms of experience recruiting city attorneys. But there's a summary there of recent recruitments that they've done for legal counsel. We asked them to report to us their recent experience, and that would be 2010 to 2012. Some did report more than that in years previous to that period. And you see a column there for proposed cost. But, from the probably $8,000 to $12,000 range.
Thank you.
And then finally, back to the ideal candidate profile. You have in your handout there stakeholders that we were able to identify. The subcommittee did express some interest in having members of the public participate in that information gathering process. And you see some of those in the other group at the bottom of the document there.
Thank you. And maybe to a council question, that looks like a good, well-rounded, diversified stakeholder group. Do we have any questions about that? Councilmember Cooper and Councilmember Peterson.
Well, I did a quick tally, and it looks like 33 individuals. Are you planning to have them all involved in the process?
Well, this list, to your question, Councilmember Cooper, this list is one that we would use to initially gather input from stakeholders into the desirable knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics that they would like to see in the attorney that's selected. So some of these may participate later on in the process, but we just haven't gone that far yet.
Well, just to follow up then, one category that you may consider in the other would be a legal expert in land use, so some sort of a land use attorney.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson.
Forgive me if you already said this. I'm just a little confused here. I see 3 different search firms. Are we using all 3? Is there going to be a selection process to determine which one to use? Can you explain that for me better?
Well, we will be discussing this in the next subcommittee meeting on the 8th, but this is just generally for your information to give you some confidence that we've done some research into search firms, but we would anticipate using one.
Will there be some kind of a competitive process, a kind of an RFQ thing? How is that look?
No,
how does that work?
No, we're beneath the limits that require that. Subject to your direction.
And in a sense, this is an RFQ process where they've done an initial, and now they're checking the qualifications. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Now, Susan, I had a discussion this morning, but it wasn't with you. And so from a legal perspective, 23 and 26 would be the type of thing in the future that could go on a study session agenda. But because it's listed here for a formal town council meeting, here's the question. If the council right now, not formal vote, but if we are giving a thumbs up or nodding the heads, can we give direction today to proceed, or do we still need to wait for Thursday for a formal vote?
Are you going to tell me what the other attorney told you?
No. We are going to listen to you.
I think you can give direction to staff. If there's any dispute, put it on the agenda and get a vote. Okay. But I think if there's...
So this is not formal, but so our team can get moving, are we ready for them to proceed? Councilman Peterson?
I know it's below the limit of what it's going to come to us, but I just give it as my recommendation to have it be a competitive process for the selection of the search firm. But other than that, I'm fine.
Right. Okay, thank you. Are you, Councilmember Ray?
I was just going to say, I'm fine with going forward, but I think that because it's on the agenda, public may have already read this and may come and want to speak on it. And I know it's an administrative item, so it's up to the discretion of the council. I think for this week, we should keep it there. So if someone is expecting to come Thursday night and say something, that it's still available.
Councilmember Daniels?
We can move it to consent and just include it in consent calendar as an approval of the process.
Good set of feedback. Thank you. And Mark, thank you. We'll move to agenda item 26.
Good evening, Mayor Lewis and council members. I'm Andy Welsh, assistant to the town manager. And tonight, this agenda item is to discuss a request by 3 council members as to how the council would like to proceed with the current practice of appointing applicants for boards and commissions to more than one board or commission. And currently, we have 12 active boards and commissions with approximately 70 unique volunteers. And we have 6 volunteers that are serving on more than one board, and 4 of them are really what maybe the discussion should center around, since 2 of them serve on a public safety and a fire board, which by state law is required that they serve on the same board. So in your council packet, I provided you some options for discussion as to how you would like to continue with this, with the interviews and the appointments of applicants. Currently, right now, if the subcommittee of council decides that they want to appoint more than an applicant to more than one board or commission, you currently can do that during your subcommittee interview process and then on your council agenda. You can decide informally not to appoint applicants to more than one board or commission, or we can have a discussion about coming forward with a formal town code changed in order to set a more firm policy about how you would like to handle appointments to the boards and commissions. And with that, concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Open discussion?
Okay.
Vice Mayor Sens.
I think we've come a long way from when I first applied to be on the Planning Commission 7 years ago. And the thing we have now is we get such a pool of applicants, the mayor wants to appoint them all. So, but I think we're to the point where we've got so many good qualified people that want to serve the town that we ought to spread it around and adopt a policy that, except we're required, like you just said, Andy, but all the other ones we should limit to one board or commission, would be my suggestion.
Okay. Councilmember Peterson?
I think the main, and I agree with Vice Mayor Sens on this, we want to do something, I think, formally, publicly, because we want people to know before they try and apply that they may or they will not be considered if they're already on another board. We don't want to put them through that. So, again, we can always amend the policy later if we need to, but I just think it's good to get that out there and let people know what they're dealing with.
So listening to the two of you, the formal option that Andy has proposed would be what you would recommend. Would there be, as I read the formal option, Councilmember Daniels first.
I was just thinking out, about those who are currently serving on 2 boards or commissions, and do we want to allow them to serve out their current term and for future terms recognize, or do we want to make changes midterm? I think that's the question.
So the grandfather approach. Any feedback on that, Councilmember Peterson?
Mayor, I think it's fine to just let them finish out the terms they're under. And just as we go forward, it will phase into that. But I mean, they were appointed under different terms. We allowed it before, so I think that's okay. But I don't know what others think.
I see nodding of heads. So Vice Mayor Sens on Thursday night. Councilmember Cooper?
Just one question. I wanted to just clarify that they will not need to resign to apply for another board, and we understand that. It's really if they're selected and they will be appointed, that they then need to resign from that other board. Is that what we're saying here?
That's a helpful clarification, thank you. And the answer would be yes. And Andy, that would be, if you could note that, make sure that the verbiage that is used supports that. So Vice Mayor Sens on Thursday night, 26 could also be moved to the consent, and with that addition that those that are currently serving on more than one board would continue on, but this would be for the future. Thank you. We move, welcome, to the agenda item 4 on the study session that also ties to presentations and proclamations. Before we do that, did we miss anything else that council members wanted to bring up in preparation for Thursday? Okay, thank you. On our study session, agenda item number 4 is talking about the efficiency and effectiveness of study sessions and council meetings. And this is on a positive note. As I've been talking to town leadership, a study session has been very beneficial to have additional topics, and what this has allowed us to do outside of the retreat is we have not had Saturday quarterly meetings for a year. And to our town clerk, even though we have it scheduled on the first Saturday in December, right now we're not planning on meeting. That's good news. And yet on that first Saturday in December, I've been told I can now go and shop Gilbert. That's my assignment that day. What that means is that where study sessions have gone a little bit longer, and maybe the combining study sessions with the Thursday meeting, the desire was to add them together, they would be equal to what we'd been doing before or less, and sometimes that's happened, sometimes it is not. It's always good to keep talking about our efficiency and effectiveness. So our last town council meeting brought up an environment that fits Mayor Lewis very well, where from a community perspective, we want to celebrate, we want to recognize, and yet we also want to be efficient. And so some suggestions came from our last town council meeting that would be as follows. And so I'll share them, and then we can see if we want to add to them or maybe consider them, think about it, or maybe not do them. One would be with our Boy Scouts, that whoever's conducting with the Boy Scouts, that we proceed, but we just go with name and move forward. Probably, I mean, it's nice to get additional information, but I think, again, from an efficiency standpoint, we could probably go that far. Councilmember Ray, you have the Boy Scouts this Thursday. You'll be our, I was going to say guinea pig, but no, you'll be our lead person on that. For the others, we have, even for our second October meeting, probably a good number of proclamations and presentations, and so this is where we'll start in November to have a limit, and once we reach that limit, to look at putting them to the next meeting or looking at another way to recognize them, and I will help manage that. The other suggestion has been to try, and when we're doing our recognition presentations, to do it in a 2 or 3 minute range. And that will mean some additional preparation on our part to make sure we have the information. To also, in this setting, to have someone like the mayor, if he's going to change the order, let you know on Tuesday. So I'll we'll practice in just a minute of how well I do that. Assuming that we go in the numerical order, if you're on deck, you would come off the dais, and if you know who you're going to be bringing up, probably have them to the side and ready to go. You know, that may only save 15 seconds, but it still will be a good practice that we can follow. So for Thursday night, I'll start after the roll call with the oath of office, and I will be the one conducting that. Item number 2, the recognition of Lance Baker, who is retired. Vice Mayor Sents, if you could do that. 2A, Councilmember Daniels, the recognition of Christopher, if you could be prepared for that. And let me also add that as we've talked to other communities have verified that it is not a requirement that we read proclamations word for word, and that we can do a high level, and that will suffice. The Gilbert Foundation, Gilbert Education Foundation, we are going to move that to number 7A. And that will be the end, and Town Manager will do the quick 15-second introduction of that. So after 2A, we will go to agenda item 4. Councilmember Peterson, you'll have that, and you'll be able to do it from the dais. Agenda item number 5. Mark, if you can grab these 2 pieces of paper and put them on the Elmo, please. This would be an example, and if you can put the first one on, of when you read the proclamation for 5 and 6 and 7, there's a lot of information there. And so this would be an example of having staff help us that possibly maybe the first paragraph of the proclamation, just so it's understood what it is. But number 5, and this will be Councilmember Cooper. So I give to Councilmember Cooper the sheet in preparation for Thursday. And what's nice about number 5 is there are several things that are happening as part of the Red Ribbon Week, as part of the gain. And so it's summarized on this sheet, and I think what you could do is look at the proclamation, take 2 or 3 key things, bring the team up that will be receiving the proclamation, and I'm going to suggest that this would be an example where you could put this on the screen and point out so the citizens here, for the media also to understand that we do have Red Ribbon Week. Here's some things that are happening. We also have our gain night on the Make a Difference Day, October 20th, and summarize that best you can. The agenda 6 and 7 are very similar. 6 is one that we will not have someone here, and I think for the record we'll make note of it, and I'll work with Councilmember Cooper or Cook on this one because I also have some assignments on 7. But Mark, if you can put the Domestic Violence Awareness Month up, that this too is an example when you read the proclamation. There are 7, 8, maybe even 9 different things. I'm not even sure what that totals, but the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we are doing a lot. And so for the community, again, this is a quick way to summarize it. And between Mayor Lewis and Councilmember Cook, we'll do our best on this, and then our communications team can take it from there and let the community know. On Thursday night, there will be, in addition to the proclamation, a moment of silence, and that will be explained, and then the just note of some of the other things that will be occurring. I don't want us to feel rushed to the point where we still don't take time to recognize and to properly do it, but at the same time, I think over time we'll get used to this, and I'll point the finger right at me first in trying to lead the way. But that is one suggestion that came, and we'll probably not have as many items. As an example, on the presentation, that will be about a 5-minute presentation, and so that's given as we've talked with them, as we've communicated that. But we'll continue to refine this. Let me just stop for a minute. So, in summary, it's to manage the presentation proclamation part of our meetings a little bit better. Are we okay with that as a council? Okay, thank you.
Mayor, quick question on that. And I think I heard you say this, but there will be, it may be a little extra burden on staff, but the proclamations aren't always available ahead of time, and so let me take that back. They're not sent automatically to us ahead of time, and so I've usually tried to request them so I can kind of at least know what the purpose is for that proclamation, but could we make that more of a practice and I know that staff doesn't know until this meeting who's doing it, but it'd be great to have those ahead of time so we can scan it, understand what to call out when we don't have something like that.
Yes, and to our town clerk, Kathy, I think we can do better on that. And Vicki has really also been a keeper of that, and often, if you haven't seen it and you don't know it, if you contact Vicki and she doesn't know it, she'll find out, and she'll become that conduit for you to get that information. Kathy?
Mayor Lewis, members of the council, I would just point out that in your agenda packet, the proclamations are part of the agenda packet, so they are included.
Most of the time. And I think what Councilmember Cooper said is sometimes they haven't been, but that's where in our Tuesday meeting we'll note that, and then we can do our follow-up.
Mayor Lewis, council, and I'd just like one clarification then. I think we're mixing proclamations and the new recognitions that are done, and I think it's the recognitions that are not included. So we can work with the mayor's staff to make sure that we get those ahead of time, and we can include those in the packet if you'd like, or just email them out.
Preference from a council perspective? Okay. Transparency, packet, online, as proposed. We'll try that. The other part from a Tuesday to Thursday in talking and looking at some of our neighboring communities and asking them their best practices, and we have many too, and so we share. I have come to understand that on a consent calendar, that in study sessions, once a consent calendar is talked about in a study session, and yes, there can be new information that comes, there can be questions that were talked about here that we still need to pull it, but in general, other communities have said their consent calendar goes very quickly. If, as an example today, there was some discussion where it was a feeling that we want to talk about on Thursday, that in this study session we would alert our town leadership that on Thursday we want to talk about that, and Vice Mayor Sens would be the one to remind us to almost in a sense pull that to an administrative part of the agenda, whatever we want to call it, but again, for efficiency, we do the best we can. So I'm going to use today as an example. We had some discussion about the consent calendar items. If no further information came, and maybe we still want to do some research, and that's where we need to be sensitive to. One of us may on Thursday night ask for that, but based on what we covered today, for town leadership to hear, is there a consent calendar item that would potentially be pulled? Councilmember Peterson.
Mayor, number 10 for me, and Mayor, this is just because I have been, and you can talk to staff and Susan and everybody else, I've been digging very deeply on the issue, and I've just barely got all the information I need. Now I have to process it and decide what I need to do about it. So I'll do my best to have all that ready for discussion here in the study session. I try, but sometimes I just need that extra time to process.
Thank you, and I think that's a fair statement. Any other comments? And Vice Mayor Sens will also give you the assignment on 23 and 26 as an example to pull those forward, remind us. And we have other feedback. Please.
Clarification then, since Councilmember Peterson wants to pull 10, why don't we just move that to public hearing and then, can we do that?
Administrative is what we would probably do.
Well,
There's no legal requirement for a public hearing, so if you want to just open it up to the public, you can, whether it's administrative or put on the public hearing agenda.
okay, you want it to administrative, that's fine.
Why don't we go to administrative?
Mayor, if I can help real fast.
Please.
Part of the purpose for this is we have staff that are here sometimes for no specific reason, because the consent calendar might take a little bit longer. We need to allow staff to get home to their families on Thursday nights. And so if they know ahead of time which items they need to come for, we can let a whole bunch of staff go home and be with their families on Thursday night. So I think that's one of the primary purposes of it, is not just to save us time, but it's to save staff time. And so if we can, if you know you're going to pull it on Tuesday at our study session, we move it to administrative items. And then that way our consent calendar is done. If staff comes for that piece of it, then they are immediately free to go, and they're not having to wait around for any other item. And if management so feels that they don't need to come, knowing that it's not going to be pulled or it hasn't been stated as being pulled, then they wouldn't even have to show up on Thursday night. So there is a bigger, I think, purpose for this in us getting organized prior to our meeting.
Thank you.
So what's your pleasure? You want it pulled?
Number 10, I definitely will.
Yeah, and so I think town staff on 10, that would be a clue to be here on Thursday night.
Other than that, I don't have any. So
we'll move that to administrative.
Just a response, though, I would say that it's on a public agenda, and while I want staff to be home as early as possible, any item can and should be allowed to be pulled, especially if there's a member of the public that wants to comment or whatever. And so that's going to be a judgment call on the management team whether their employees are here. But I think I reserve the right to pull anything, and I think any council member should as well.
Thank you. Here's a question that I did discover from the neighboring communities, that it doesn't take long, and it's nice to recognize these individuals because they are great volunteers, but the oath of office has been something that I've learned neighboring communities do not do that in their formal council meetings. They have the oath taken at their planning commission meeting or their redevelopment commission meeting. And do you have any feelings on that? Is that something that we could think about and discuss at our next meeting, or if there's some feedback right now, I'd be willing to take it on your thoughts related to possibly moving that away from the formal council meeting.
Mayor, is that something that only you can do, and would that be a burden on your calendar, or can you assign that out?
That would be assigned out, if we follow the best practice of the other communities.
Right.
So the liaison would do the oath.
Mm-hmm. Any feedback on that? Is that something we would like to try doing? And maybe we, for Kathy, because we even have an oath this Thursday, maybe we continue it to the end of December and then start in January, something like that. But
yeah, good.
Mayor,
Councilor Murray.
I do like that idea, and I would say that so that the public knows of these appointments, at the end of this council meeting, when we have the opportunity to give reports from each of our boards and commissions, at that point maybe it would be appropriate to then announce who has been appointed to a board or commission, and it's that way the public knows about it.
Thank you, and even to list it on the agenda.
Yeah, it's always listed on the agenda when we make the announcement, so that's the public announcement.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson.
So will these oaths still be taking place in a public meeting, and will they still be on the public agenda?
Yes.
Okay, just not in the town council meeting, maybe a P&Z or design review board, one of their meetings.
Right.
Okay.
And to give town leadership then time to get ready for that, if we make that change January 1st, does that work?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Kathy, I don't know if you heard that, but we'll take January 1st, but if you feel like you're ready to do it sooner, great, but we'll make that change effective January 1st. There are other ways and items of improving efficiency that have been thought about, discussed. That may be a stopping point for me right now. We're talking to town leadership about what items come to study sessions, and then also giving town leadership the open door to say when you have policy decisions that need to be made, that we can find additional ways to deal with that. There's even discussion about, for some e-sessions, it really helps to be together. For some, they could be done via teleconference, and that would help some of us with other work assignments, and we'll continue to look at that. But for today, are there any other suggestions, comments that any of you would like to make? Please.
You mentioned the teleconference. I don't know if this is even appropriate, but as far as efficiency goes, and you can stop me if I'm off track, I know that conferencing in is very difficult. So I think we need to fast track the ability to hear whoever's on the call. And I would just, for example, instead of having a convener microphone hearing the sound, whatever we say in a microphone should go directly to that phone line instead of by way of another method, because it is very difficult to hear in a phone call. And that would open up opportunities for being more efficient and being able to participate more when
Thank
we're
you.
not available or around. So,
Thank you.
Mayor,
Please.
are you going to do item 2?
Oh, item 2 has, thank you. On the study session, I did not mention this, but item 2, the presenters were not able to be here, and that is being moved to the Community Services Subcommittee on October 23rd.
Okay.
and Mayor, we ought to mention there will be a follow-up presentation to the council as well, but that'll be on a future agenda. But
thank you.
First, it comes to the subcommittee, but everyone else will also get to hear about it.
Thank you. And on Thursday night, when we talk about additional meetings and places we've been, I'm just going to point this out, that I'll put a copy of this in the council room. This is from today's MAG Economic Development meeting where they talked about freight transportation framework, and they had 17 sites in the valley that were studied, but 4 in great detail. One of the 4 is the Gateway Airport. And so there's information about that I think you'll be interested in. So before we shift to an executive session, did we miss anything else?
Yes, sir.
Please, Vice Mayor Sens.
I don't know if you want to make an announcement, but you're going to be out of town, cutting it close as you have been known to do in the past. So in case your flight is delayed, just let everyone know that we may...
You're ready to go.
That we may start without you Thursday night.
Thank you.
And I think Manager Bander's on the same plane.
That's called teamwork. Both directions. We're managing managers, keep an eye on me.
If it's overbooked, then just leave Patrick there.
Sounds good. Thank you. We end our study session, and I call to order a special meeting. Is there a motion to recess the special meeting and reconvene in an executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Good to have you here. And I have, let's do it so I don't forget.